Hello everyone and welcome to my membership channel. This is Detrina from the Alluring Bead Boutique, and today we're going to learn how to make this adorable little, well, originally I called the pattern Aventurine Dreams because the first thing I did was make this necklace. And I used these beautiful little aventurine colored mini silkies in it, and that is where the name came from. So I'm going to have to come up for a new name for it, obviously, because I've also done it here in this beautiful opaque pink luster version. And that's what I'm going to do today, show you guys how to make the component. And I'm going to make a necklace to match these earrings. If you do not want to participate in my memberships, you can purchase this pattern over on the alluringbeadboutique.com, and you can still make this beautiful little project. I love these giant crystal rivolis sitting in the center here. You can see then how just by changing the color of my beads, this one, you don't see the gold on that in the AB finish so much on this one, but look how it sparkles and turns gold on this one because we have those beautiful gold crescent beads there. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll talk about the materials that you're going to need today, and then we will get started. So what I did was I used some mini beads to create this beaded bezel. I used the mini silkies, but I also used some of these little mini super duos that you see here. And then I also used some two-hole crescents. So we have 3 different two-hole beads in this project. I have some mini silkies, and you can see these that they're the pink opaque luster. I got these from Eureka Crystal Beads. I got the mini silkies over at Hobby Lobby, but they're the exact same color beads, so that we know we need the pink opaque luster. Mini silkies and mini duos. For my crescents, I'll be using these metallic flax, but they're metallic matte flax. You can use any beads you want, but you'll want to stick with these same sizes in order for the pattern to come out correctly. So these are the Checkmates Flax Metallic Matte 2-hole crescents. Then I've got some 11s and some 15s on my seed beads. My 11s are Toho Milky Mauve Silver Lined Permanent Finish. And my 15s are Starlight Galvanized Toho seed beads. You'll need a beading needle, and I suggest that you get as small a needle as you've got. The smallest one I happen to have is an 11 here, and if you don't have a really small beading needle, then you're going to want to go with a small thread, like a 0.004 fire line. I'm going to be using a size 11 needle and 0.006 fire line in the crystal clear. You'll probably need at least a good wingspan, maybe more. Let me check my pattern. So on my pattern, I wrote out 3 feet of thread, but I think maybe you should just go ahead and start with the wingspan. And that's what I'm going to do. You can always add thread if you need to in any project. So what I'll do here is I'm going to go ahead and clean off my work area, and I'm going to lay out the beads that I need, and I'll come back and we will get started. So I've got my materials laid out, and the crystal I'm going to be using is a 16 millimeter, and these are crystal clear with the AB finish. For each component, you're going to need 4 of your crescent beads, and I strongly suggest that you check all the holes of your 2-hole beads before you begin. So I've got 4 of my crescents, I've got 4 of my mini silkies, and this is per component. So this, you'll need your crystal, 4 crescents, 4 mini silkies. You'll need a total of 12 super duos. You can use regular super duos in this project. On the one the first one I made, I used regular size super duos, but on these pink ones, I used the mini duos. So check the holes of 12 of those. Get your 15 O's and your 11 O's. So what we're going to do on our initial pickup is we are going to pick up the beads that constitute the very inner circle of the front. So I'm going to tell you the sequence, and we're going to pick this up 4 times. So I'm going to pick up a 15-0, a mini duo, a 15-0, and a crescent. But I want to make sure that my crescents come onto my needle in this way. So I want them shaped like a little moon, and I want to come through the top hole like that. And we're going to pick up a 15-0, a mini duo, a 15-0, and then we're going to pick up our Silky. And then we're going to come through the Silky in the same way. We want to come through that top hole so that both of our bottom holes are on the same plane down there, like that. Then we're just going to repeat that 3 more times. And I like to just go ahead and pick these up and make sure I'm putting them on right when I pick them up, just like that. 15-0, super duo, 15-0. And then my Silky, and the same thing. I want to make sure that I'm coming through that bead correctly each time. All right, so I have 2 more to go, and then we'll come back and we'll make this into a loop. So I've got all my beads on, but before I go passing through these beads again to form my loop, I'm just going to double check that all my beads are correct. I'm going through the right hole of each of my 2-hole beads, and that I have my little 15-0s spaced out as they should be in between. And once you've got all this done, you can do one of 2 things. You can either tie this into a circle using 2 overhand knots. You can pass through all the beads again from the bottom up before you tie 2 overhand knots, or you can pass through all the beads again and then simply move into position to form the loop. Because we're going to be doing a lot of right angle weave with some of these relatively small beads, I think what I'm going to do is just go ahead and tie mine into the loop. Because I have to pass through these beads several times, and I don't have a smaller needle than an 11. This is why I'm going to just go ahead and tie 2 overhand knots. But when I do this, I need to make sure that both of those knots fall into the same place between the first bead I picked up and the last bead that I picked up, which in this case is that 15-0 in my last mini Silky. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that nice and snug. And then I'm going to take a look that my top looks really good, just like this. And then you can go, of course, and put your crystal underneath to make sure that once we finish this bezel, everything is going to secure that stone nicely inside of the bezel. To finish closing off this circle, I'm going to need to move through a couple of beads going into the first bead, which was my 15-0, and then I'm going to sew through the same hole of that little mini duo. And I flipped my work over because it was just easier to get into that 15-0 from the back side. So now we have this cute little loop, and we're in position also at the same time to work on this lower section. So we're coming out of the top hole of that super duo on the left. I'm going to take my needle and go back through that mini duo on the bottom hole from left to right. So now I'm going to be sewing back in the other direction. So now we're going to pick up an 11-0, and we're going to put an 11-0 between every single one of these beads coming back around in the opposite direction. So all you're going to do is pick up an 11-0, sew through the Silky, the bottom hole of the Silky. Pick up an 11-0, sew through the next super duo. An 11-0, sew through the bottom hole of this crescent. And then pick up another 11-0 and sew through the bottom hole of the next super duo. And just repeat that, stitching an 11-0 in between the bottom hole of all of our 2-hole beads until we come all the way back around to the opposite side. Because I tied a knot, I can go ahead and end my tail thread, so I went ahead and took my tail thread off because it was kind of long and it was getting in the way. So I've worked my way back around, and I'm getting ready to, I'm exiting from that crescent. I've got my 11-0 on. I'm going to sew back through that bottom hole of the very first super duo or mini duo that I started from. And as you pull that a little bit tighter, you will see how it kind of domes this, the top part of our bezel down a little bit towards the edge, like this. And that's what you want. And if you need to at this point, you can tighten this up just a little bit and go ahead and get things shaped up the way that you want them to look before we move on. The next thing we want to do is move through the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 beads until we're exiting from our crescent. And make sure that you don't skip any beads, or you're going to have a nice white thread showing on your bezel. So here I am, and I'm in position to start the first unit of the back of my bezel. So now that we're exiting our crescent bead, we're going to flip our work over, because what we're going to be working on now is the back side of our bezel. So if you'll notice here, what I've done is I have used right angle weave, and along with a little bit of sort of like netting stitch here to create the back of this bezel. And I've created it in such a way that it comes around and covers most of the foil on the back of our crystal rivoli. You don't have to do it this way, but I kind of like it, and I think it looks pretty from the back as well as the front. And, you know, it also protects that foil finish, which the foil is what gives the sparkle to these Swarovski rivolis. So let's go ahead and make our first right angle weave unit, and for this we're only going to use 11/0s. So we are going to simply pick up our 3 11/0s and come back right back through that hole, in the same hole in our crescent bead, which is the bottom hole. So we're going to come around and pull this through, but as we pull it through, we want these 3 seed beads of this unit to sit on this side of the crescent. Let me get it in place there, so that it sits like this on the crescent. Then we're just going to move through to our next crescent bead. So I found it that it works a lot better just to pass through 2 beads at a time on the base. So the 11 and the mini duo or super duo. Then the next 11 and the silky. And this basically helps you to shape up this cup form that we're making here, if you just follow simply passing a couple of beads at a time. So I'm going to do that until I've moved into my next crescent. So I come through that next 11 and super duo. Now I'm going to come through the 11 and the crescent here and do the same thing. Pick up my 3 11s and form that right angle weave unit. Make sure the beads sit to the inside or the back side of the crescent. And then I'll sew around and do that, sew through 2 at a time to the next crescent, so forth, until I wind back up, coming out of this crescent bead on the very first unit that I created. So I added my last unit here, and I'm sewing back through. As I approach my first crescent that I started this round from, I want to make sure that I'm going through the 11 on the base right there, and just my crescent on this side. And because I've taken my time working a few beads at a time, you can see that my shape has cupped up really nice, and it looks pretty good. So now I'm going to be working with those right angle weave units that we just created. So I'm exiting from this crescent. I am going to sew up the right side bead of that right angle weave unit, that 11/0, and then I'm going to come over through the bead at the top, like that. So if I hold my little crystal in place, you can see that my thread is exiting the top of that right angle weave unit, and that I have the little center bead of each of those units positioned so that I can create the back side of this bezel with ease. So here's the bead sequence that I will be sewing in between those center beads on my right angle weave units. I have an 11, a 15, a mini duo, a 15, and an 11. I am exiting, coming in this direction from that center bead, I am going to sew through the next center bead on the next crescent. Just like that. And then I'm just going to repeat that 3 more times. Picking up the 11, 15, mini duo, 15, 11. Come through the next center bead above the crescent. Or in this instance, I should say behind the crescent. I got 2 more to do. Pick up my 5 beads. Come through that top bead of the next unit. And then I have 1 more to do. And as I come through, I want to make sure that I sew through just that top bead of the next unit, and then I'm hitting the top bead and not one of those side beads right there. But before I pull this too tight, I want to put my crystal in the middle. So let's get our crystal there in the center, and then we will go ahead and pull our beads snug like that. And don't worry if things are a little bit loose. We're going to come back through and do some embellishment and connect everything together. And before we move on, the first thing we want to do is reinforce this loop of beads that we just created. So in order to do that, you are going to want to pass through those 5 beads again, and you want to make sure you're going through the same hole of your mini duo or super duo that you already passed through. So I was exiting the bead I started from on the previous round. I need to pass through the 11, 15, mini duo, 15, 11, and then the next 11 on my next unit, sitting there at the next crescent bead. We're going to pull these really snug. So go ahead and reinforce that entire loop of beads that we just added, and make sure that you don't skip any beads. Once you've passed through the 4 sides, I want you to pass through the first side 1 more time to close that inner loop of beads. And look how nicely everything tightened up. You can no longer see any exposed thread. Then we're going to move into our mini duo. So we'll come through the next 11, the 15, and the same hole of our mini duo, that bottom hole. Then we're going to reverse direction and come through the top hole of that little mini duo. Now we're ready to close up our last little mini duos here. To do this, we're going to pick up a 15, an 11, and a 15, and simply sew through the top hole of our next little duo bead. And just repeat that all the way around. 15, 11, 15. Come through the top hole of our next duo. We're going to do that until we've come all the way back around, and then we're going to reinforce the circle of beads that we're creating here. So I have 1 more to go. And I'm going to pass back through the same top hole of that first mini duo from which I started this round. And then I'm simply going to reinforce this circle of beads all 1 more time. I'm going to start here. This will be my first side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'm going to go through that first set of beads 1 more time till I'm exiting from that mini duo right there. Make sure you don't skip any beads and work yourself around until you're exiting. You've closed the circle and you're exiting a mini duo. So the next thing we're going to do is work our way back towards this row of beadwork here. And we're going to do some embellishments. So I was exiting that super duo out of the top hole, closest to the center of the back. So I'm just going to step back down through that super duo. I'm going to come through the 15, the 11, and then the 15 that is the top center of that right angle weave unit. I am going to come down the bead on the side of that right angle weave unit. So now I'm on the left. So I'm coming down the bead on the left. Then I'm going to push through my crescent bead and the next 11-0 on the other side. And I'm going to work my way over to the Silky. So I'm going to come through the next little mini duo and 11-0. And my beadwork is getting tight. So now I'm going to stop right here at this 11-0. So now I'm going to pick up 4 of my 11-0s. I'm exiting from this 11-0. I'm going to skip my Silky and sew through just the 11-0 on the other side. Now I'm going to pick up 4 15s. I am exiting to the right side of that 11-0. I am going to take my needle and I am going to sew from right to left through the bottom hole of the mini duo on the back side of my bezel, the next layer up. Now I pull those 4 15s right there. I'm going to pick up 4 more of my 15-0s. Make sure you count your beads correctly. And then I am going to come back through the 11-0 that I started from on the left side of my Silky. Not one of the ones I picked up, but the one that is coming right next to my mini duo on the base right there. So I'm sewing through that 11-0 on the base. I'll pull those 4 beads in so that this is what I have. And now I'm going to sew up through these 2 11-0s on the outside edge of my Silky right there. Now pull everything nice and snug, just like that. So now we're just going to add this little accent tip bead. So pick up a 15-0 and we're going to pass through the next 3 11-0s. So we're going to pass through the 2 on our embellishment plus the 1 on the base. When we pull that through, you'll see how it creates that beautiful little gold tip bead right there. So now we're just going to move through the base beads here, this little mini duo, 11, crescent, 11, mini duo, till we're exiting that next 11 above to the side of our Silky. And once again, this beadwork is going to get a little bit tight, so just pass through the best you can. You may want to go through the mini do by itself like that. You'll just have to use your own judgment. Come through your crescent, the 11, the crescent, the 11. Come through the next mini duo and the 11 on the other side. And I can only get through my mini duo, so I'll do that first. And then I'll get into my 11 right there. So use your own judgment on which way it's easiest for you to travel through these beads. And then we're just going to repeat that. So I will show you one more. I'm going to pick up my 4 11-0s. I'm exiting this 11. I'm going to skip over my Silky bead and sew through just the 1 11 on the other side on the base. We're going to do our 4 15-0s. And we're going to come up through the bottom hole of that mini duo on the back side like that. Pick up 4 more. And this time we are going to come into the 3 11-0s. So we're going to come through the 1 on the base plus 2 of the ones we added right there. So we can put the little gold tip accent bead. So there we have that part. We're going to pick up a gold bead and we're going to come down through the 3 11s on the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew through all these beads to my next Silky, repeat the steps, sew through these beads to that Silky, and repeat the steps. Then I'll meet you guys back and show you the final embellishment. So I've added my, finished my embellishments here, and I've added my last tip bead, and I'm exiting from that 11-0. The final embellishment we're going to add are these two little gold 15-0 gold beads on the outside edge of our Silkies. So we are currently exiting from this 11-0, so we're going to have to sew through the next few beads. So I'm going to come on through that mini duo. And I'm simply just going to work my way forward until my working thread is exiting the same 11-0 from which I began this entire round. So I have to go through this next mini duo, then one more 11-0. So I've got this mini duo and this 11-0. So keep moving through. Alright, so I have stitched myself around until I am exiting that 11-0 on the base. And I am headed towards my Silky. So now we're ready to add our final embellishments, and as we are headed towards that Silky, all we have to do is pick up one of our 15-0 gold and sew straight through the Silky. We are going to pick up another 15-0, and we are going to sew into the 11 on the base. So it's going to be the 11 that is sitting here next to that mini duo. So we will come through. If you can get through the mini duo at the same time, that will help. If you can't, just come through the 11. We're going to put those two little accent beads right there on either side of our Silky, just like that. And that covers up any little bit of exposed thread we had here along those Silkies. So now my beadwork is really tight, and I don't want to have to sew through those base beads again. And you'll notice that I'm exiting from that 11-0 here on the base. So I'm going to show you an easy way to get through this beadwork. So all you have to do is sew up through those 4 gold accent beads that we added going into this little super duo on the back side of our bezel. And we can move through these beads. So we'll come through the super duo, the 15-0, the 2 11-0s. Make sure you're hitting that 11-0. That's the top of that right angle weave unit right there. And we are going to move through until we are exiting the next little super duo right here. So that means I need to come through the 11, the 15, and then the super duo. And these were part of our little beads that we created the back side of our bezel with. So I'm coming through that 11, 15, and that next super duo. I can then sew down through the 4 gold seed beads on this side. Just like that. And then I can come through the 1 11-0 right beside the Silky on the base row. Pick up my 15, sew through my Silky. Pick up my next 15, and then I'm going to sew through just that 11-0 on the base right beside that super duo. Now I need to come back up through the 4 gold seed beads in the center on the back. And I'm going to sew through to my next one. So I'll sew through that super duo, the 15, and the 2 11s. Make sure you don't pass under anything. Make sure you're hitting that 11-0 that is part of that, the top bead of the right angle weave unit over the crescent. And come on into that next little super duo. So we'll go through 11, 15, and super duo. And make sure that you're just coming through the super duo, not the 15 on the other side. You can take this a couple of beads at a time if you need to. And so that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to sew down the gold beads into the 11, add the accent beads onto my last 2 silkies, and then I'll meet you back. So I added my last little 15-0 here on the opposite side of my silky, and now I need to determine where I want to put my bail. So if you'll notice here on my earrings, I centered my bail over a crescent. On the necklace, I had centered my bail over one of my silkies. So pick whichever spot that you want to put your bail in, and I'll show you guys how to add this bail. So what I was going to do is, because I like these like this, but I like the necklace sitting on the diamond shape. So I'm going to do mine over a silky. And because my beadwork is so tight, what I'm doing is utilizing these beads on the back. So I'm going to come back up through those gold seed beads there that I added as an accent. And I'm going to come back through all these beads until I reach this silky here. I could potentially do it right there where I just added that accent bead. So that might even be the better way to do it. So let's just come through the silky then. We'll just do it that way. And once I'm coming through that silky, I'm going to sew down these beads through the 3 11s and into that little gold tip bead. Let's come down the 4 gold. Sew up through the 3 11s. And then come over into the tip bead here at the top, the gold tip bead. So on my earrings, I use seed beads here at the top for a bail. On my other pendant, which unfortunately I went ahead and cut that one up so I could use the crystal for the pink and have a matching set, I used a wire guard here at the top in lieu of these tiny 15-0 seed beads. And I'm debating on which way I like it the best, and I think I like it pretty good with just these little seed beads. But since we're making a necklace, we might want to consider using the wire guardian, and that gives us something for the chain to go through, or jump ring. So I'm going to lay my component down, and my working thread is exiting to the left of my tip bead. I want to pick up an 11, a 15, and 11, and then I want to pick up my silky, but I want to make sure that the pattern part of the silky faces upwards. So I'm coming up through that left side hole with the domed part facing up. Now I'll go ahead and let that all drop right down to the beadwork, just like that. Now, using the same principle, I'm going to pick up another 11, 15, 11, and I'm going to pick up one of my wire guards. And I'll let all of that drop down. I'm going to come down through the other side of my wire guardian, this little horseshoe. And when I do, I want to make sure that my thread falls into that little tiny divot there on top of the wire guard like that. And I'm just going to pull everything into the beadwork. So that now this is what I have. It doesn't matter if my work flipped over because I can work just as easily from this side. So now I need to pick up another 15, 11, and a 15. And I need to come down through the other side of my silky. And I'm going to pick up my same 3 beads, 15, 11, 15. And I am going to come back through that tip bead from the opposite side right there. So that here's my little bail. And now what I need to do is simply reinforce this a couple of times. Now I could have done this differently at the top. I could have put a 15 here at the bottom, but that would basically cause the same problem I'm having here with those beads twisting in the center. So let's go ahead and just reinforce by passing through all of these beads again, and the wire guardian in the exact same order that we went and thread path that we used to create it. So we'll go up through the 3 beads and the Silky here on the left. Then we'll go up through the 3 beads and the wire guard on the left. We are going to pass down through the wire guard and the 3 beads on the right hand side. If we can't get through all the beads at once, that's fine. If we can't, that's great. I was able to get through the 3 beads and the Silky and the wire guard there. So we'll come on through. Same thing. Make sure that thread falls into that little divot at the top of your wire guard. We're going to come back down through the 3 beads here on the right hand side. 15, 11, 15. And then we are going to pass back through our tip bead one more time. And you can secure that again by reinforcing it one more time. On a pendant, on a necklace, you do get a little bit more wear and tear here from when you're taking, your jewelry on and off. It's not so bad on your earrings because basically you're just putting your earring wire through and then going about your day. Your necklace, you tend to fidget with it a little bit more, but that's how you add the bail at the tip, at the corner. So that's just one idea for a bail. Like I said, on the earrings, I did it differently. I used my crescent bead as in place of the tip bead on this one. And I did things just a little bit differently. I created this little section here. I came out, I put 3 beads on this side, came out of my Silky, and I picked up 3 beads. I put six of my 15-0s here, came back down through that 11 there, picked up 2 15s, went back through the Silky, picked up 3 beads here, and came back through the crescent. Then as I went up and reinforced, when I passed up through the first 2 15-0s here, I picked up another 15-0, went through 2, picked up a 15-0, went through 2, then went down through my 11, down through here, and back through the crescent to reinforce it. And it gives this nice little shape here to the place where you connect your earring wire or a jump ring. It's just kind of pretty. So after you're finished reinforcing, I went through my beads one more time, and I've passed through my center tip bead, and I worked down the 3 beads here on the side. And I'm going to form a half hitch knot right here between that super duo and that last 11-0. I passed my needle under the thread, pulled a little small loop, then passed my needle through the loop. And then I'm going to pull that knot in right there beside the 11-0 where I was exiting. I can see if I can get through that super duo, or that mini duo one more time and tie a couple of more. If I can't get through it, then I can pass down these beads on the back side, those gold beads again, and we can tie some half hitch knots here in the center on the back. Add our bail. I want to take a quick look and show you guys here. On the necklace, I used wire guardians, and I'm going to do that on this pendant because on a necklace, you get a lot of wear and tear. But also, these C beads here at the top are tending to twist, so at some point, I am going to redo these bails here with a wire guardian. So let's go ahead and let me show you how we're going to go about doing that. So I'm going to lay my component down, and my working thread is exiting to the left of my tip bead. I want to pick up an 11, a 15, and 11, and then I want to pick up my Silky, but I want to make sure that the pattern part of the Silky faces upwards. So I'm coming up through that left side hole with the domed part facing up. Now go ahead and let that all drop right down to the beadwork. Just like that. Now, using the same principle, I'm going to pick up another 11, 15, 11, and I'm going to pick up one of my wire guards. And I'll let all of that drop down. I am going to come down through the other side of my wire guardian, this little horseshoe. And when I do, I want to make sure that my thread falls into that little tiny divot there on top of the wire guard like that. Then I'm just going to pull everything into the beadwork. So that now this is what I have. It doesn't matter if my work flipped over because I can work just as easily from this side. So now I need to pick up another 15, 11, and a 15. And I need to come down through the other side of my Silky. Yeah, I'm going to pick up my same 3 beads, 15, 11, 15. And I am going to come back through that tip bead from the opposite side right there. So that here's my little bail. And now what I need to do is simply reinforce this a couple of times. Now I could have done this differently at the top. I could have put a 15 here at the bottom, but that would basically cause the same problem I'm having here with those beads twisting in the center. So let's go ahead and just reinforce by passing through all of these beads again and the wire guardian in the exact same order that we went and thread path that we used to create it. So we'll go up through the 3 beads and the Silky here on the left. Then we'll go up through the 3 beads and the wire guard on the left. We are going to pass down through the wire guard and the 3 beads on the right hand side. If we can't get through all the beads at once, that's fine. If we can't, that's great. I was able to get through the 3 beads and the Silky and the wire guard there. So we'll come on through. Same thing. Make sure that thread falls into that little divot at the top of your wire guard. We're going to come back down through the 3 beads here on the right hand side, 15, 11, 15. And then we are going to pass back through our tip bead one more time. And you can secure that again by reinforcing it one more time. On a pendant, on a necklace, you do get a little bit more wear and tear here from when you're taking, your jewelry on and off. It's not so bad on your earrings because basically you're just putting your earring wire through and then going about your day. Your necklace, you tend to fidget with it a little bit more, but that's how you add the bail at the tip, at the corner. So that's just one idea for a bail. Like I said, on the earrings, I did it differently. I used my crescent bead as in place of the tip bead on this one. And I did things just a little bit differently. I created this little section here. I came out, I put 3 beads on this side, came out of my Silky, and I picked up 3 beads. I put six of my 15-0s here, came back down through that 11 there, picked up 2 15s, went back through the Silky, picked up 3 beads here, and came back through the crescent. Then as I went up and reinforced, when I passed up through the first 2 15-0s here, I picked up another 15-0, went through 2, picked up a 15-0, went through 2, then went down through my 11, down through here, and back through the crescent to reinforce it. And it gives this nice little shape here to the place where you connect your earring wire or a jump ring. It's just kind of pretty. So after you're finished reinforcing, I went through my beads one more time, and I've passed through my center tip bead, and I worked down the 3 beads here on the side. And I'm going to form a half-hitch knot right here between that super duo and that last 11-0. I passed my needle under the thread, pulled a little small loop, then passed my needle through the loop. And then I'm going to pull that knot in right there beside the 11-0 where I was exiting. I can see if I can get through that super duo, or that mini duo one more time and tie a couple of more. If I can't get through it, then I can pass down these beads on the back side, those gold beads again, and we can tie some half hitch knots here in the center on the back. Don't let your thread get hung up on your bail as you pull through. I'm going to come through that super duo one last time. And then I'm going to come up into this top center set of beads right there. And I'm going to tie my half hitch knots there because that's probably the easiest place you can do it. And usually it's easiest to do it beside of your 11-0 instead of a 15. So I'm going to go through my 11. I went through the 15 and the 11. And I'm going to come under the thread bridge in the center. And I'm going to pull myself until I have a little loop. Once again, make sure you're not getting hung up here on this bail. Once you have your loop, put your needle through, pull really slow so that knot falls in between the 11-0 you're exiting and the 15-0 right next to it. And then move through and do some more beads. Do some more knots, I'm sorry. Once you feel like you've got enough half hitch knots, usually 2 or 3 is plenty, you can then just cut your thread with your scissors or your thread burner. So there's the back, and there's the front of this beautiful little pendant. Or component. You can make it an earring, doesn't have to be a pendant.